we're going to hold responsible the person, the only person, who could have inflicted these injuries on this 18-month-old baby.
A Georgia beauty queen was in the fight of her life as she stood accused of beating her boyfriend's little boy to death, but her attorney said she was innocent.
She has been accused of a crime she did not commit, based upon speculation that is incorrect.
I take a look at what we learned about the death of baby JD before the verdict in Trinity Poague's trial.
On counts 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, the verdict reads, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
And I'll look at what Trinity's facial expressions may have told us. Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. You know, there's a reason that Morgan & Morgan is America's largest personal injury law firm. It's because the firm wins a lot. The firm has more than 1,000 lawyers who've recovered $25 billion from more than 500,000 clients. In the last few months alone, a client in Florida received $12 million when the insurance company offered just $350,000. In Pennsylvania, another client was awarded $26 million. That was 40 times the insurer's offer. Morgan & Morgan makes it really easy to fight for what you deserve. You can even start a claim from your phone. So if you are ever injured, you can start a claim at forthepeople.com/crimefix. Click the link below or scan that QR code that you see right there on your screen. Trinity Poague has been convicted of a terrible crime that she says she didn't commit. She had been accused of murdering the 18-month-old son of her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Julian Williams. The little boy's legal name was Romeo Angelus, but everyone called him JD. Julian Williams was JD's dad, and Julian was the primary parent in little JD's life. JD died in January of 2024 in Sumter County, Georgia. The DA says that JD died after spending time with Trinity Poague alone. I'll get into the claims that the DA was making about Trinity in just a moment, but first, a little bit more about her. In January of 2024, Trinity Poague was a freshman at Georgia Southwestern State University. She was just 18 years old. A year earlier, she'd been crowned Miss Donaldsonville and even competed in the Miss National Peanut Festival. But Trinity's days as a pageant queen ended for good, following her arrest for little JD's murder in early 2024. During Trinity's trial in Georgia, she didn't show a whole lot of emotion. And we'll talk about that with a body language expert here shortly. But first, here's a little bit of DA Bud Lamb's opening statement.
Throughout all of this, one of the primary sources of friction that you will hear about, the primary sources of friction in this relationship, and what you will hear is this, that Trinity Poague resented this child. She resented this child because the child got more of Julian Williams. Jay goes by Jay. Most people call him Jay Williams, and so if I say Jay or Julian, I'm talking about the same person. I'm talking about the child's father. But you know, the child JD got a lot more attention from Jay than perhaps than Ms. Poague did. In addition to that, the evidence will show that she resented the fact that she was sort of placed in a stepmother role, that wasn't the role she wanted to be in, that she wanted to have a family, she wanted to have children, she wanted to have a child or children with Jay Williams, but not that child. She wanted her own child with Jay Williams.
Bud Lamb also told the jurors that there was evidence that Trinity simply didn't like baby JD and had threatened to hurt him.
You will see and hear evidence in both in the form of text messages and people who knew Trinity Poague and who had conversations with her, and you'll hear from them about the things that she said, and you'll see some of the text messages that she said, and going all the way back to like August of 2023. she was expressing her anger about the child, her frustration about the child, that, commented in a text message to her roommate that she really would just like to punch him, and it's like, well, I know that sounds terrible, because he's just a little boy, but still, I wish I could just punch him. And she makes those references and things like that continue throughout their relationship. So she texts Paris and she says, I can't do being around JD anymore. He hates me and I hate him. It's what she's telling Paris even while she's driving to Americus with the child in her car. She put the child in her car and Jay was following them up here.
Lamb also told the jury how JD was fine when his dad was with him, but when he returned, the boy was hurt.
When Jay Williams left to go to pick up pizza, the child was sitting up, eating, not in any distress, didn't have a mark on him. But by the time the child got to the emergency room, after spending 35 minutes in that room with Trinity Poague, this is what the child had. He had fresh bruising on his face. There was a fresh bruise, a visible, immediate, a sort of immediately visible bruise on the right side. Right side of his forehead. There was a bruise on the right side of his neck. There was a bruise on his cheek. There was a much bigger bruise on his other cheek. And you'll hear some testimony. You'll hear some testimony from the medical examiner and maybe others about what kind of a bruise this was. It's what they call a pattern bruise. Okay, it's something that when a doctor, when a medical examiner, somebody who's trained and experienced, looks at it, they say, I know what caused that bruise because it's like a bruise and there's a little break, in the skin, whatever, where it's not bruised, and there's another bruise, and it's called a pattern bruise because it's something that is known as the kind of bruise you get from a hard slap to the face, or from this kind of a thing, this kind of a pinch to the face. So there's that bruise on the left side. He's bleeding from his brain. There are bruises, multiple bruises, 4, 5, or more fresh bruises on the top of this child's head. Okay? Here and here and here and here, and in the temporal parietal region, which I think means right here, okay? And up here at the top of his head. And that's not all. On the back of his head, this bone right here at the bottom of the bottom of the skull, okay, that sort of dish shape that kind of goes in, okay, sort of naturally protected by your shoulders and by the crown of your head. This bone here at the bottom of his skull, the occipital bone, is fractured. Not only is the occipital bone fractured, but he has a massive hemorrhage in that location at the back of his head. A hemorrhage that was causing a hematoma, collection of blood, that was so fresh and so immediate that the people at the emergency room are like, you can feel it.
But Trinity's defense attorney told jurors that Trinity was innocent.
This is an 18-month-old child that had tragic injuries. There's no question about that. But the second victim sits at this table right here, right behind me. That victim is Trinity Poague, because she has been accused of a crime she did not commit based upon speculation that is incorrect. Because you're going to see from the evidence that what occurred here is nothing to do with Trinity Poague's hands, nothing to do with any violence she would have ever have done toward the child. The evidence is going to show you that Trinity Poague was 18 years old at the time she was accused of this crime. She had graduated from high school the spring before that. She had graduated with honors. She had received a scholarship from the Jimmy Carter Scholarship Program. She agreed to come to Georgia Southwestern under that scholarship program to get a degree in nursing. She had just completed her first semester of school, making straight A's, when it began the second semester in January of 2024. Now, when she first entered Georgia Southwestern back in August of 2023, she had a relationship of boyfriend-girlfriend with Julian Williams, who you've already heard a little about. Julian Williams is 23 years old. She's 18. This relationship, as has already been described and we acknowledge, was volatile. It was an immature relationship, one in which they argued and fought and broke up and got back together and broke up and got back together. The breakups were usually on an hour or two, fussing over text messages or whatever. But you will see from that evidence and all that you will hear from the courtroom that Julian Williams was a controlling boyfriend. He wanted to know everything about what Trinity Poague was doing. He wanted to know the passwords for every bit of her social media, Snapchat, Facebook, TikTok, whatever it may be. He wanted complete access. That when he text messaged when he was away, he wanted a response immediately. He wanted to know that she was not going anywhere when she was in college where she would talk to other men. He did not want her to do anything. He was a controlling factor in their relationship. But at the same time, Trinity Poague at the time thought she was in love with Julian Williams. And so as time went on from August until January when this event occurred, Julian Williams would come to see her at Georgia Southwestern College and spend the night quite often. He spent every weekend, virtually every weekend with her.
Tim Gamble told jurors the investigation into JD's death was flawed.
There was a rush to judgment in this case. You'll see the GBI got in this case early. Said that Trinity Poague was the last person that was with the child. Child was in distress. She must have done it. From that point on, there was no effort to do anything but try to prove that Trinity Poague was the person that did it. But they had problems, as I said, when they went into the dorm room and they scoured it trying to find evidence. They found nothing. That did not support their theory very much. So they then have said they think it had to be within a time frame, a very short time frame, that this occurred.
When Julian Williams testified about his son's death, there was a very, very sad moment. And then the defense used that as an opportunity to question the investigation.
When was she throwing up?
He possibly started when I got out, when I got him, and I know he was throwing up when I got in the car.
Okay. So when you were getting in the car, when you were in the car, he threw up on you. Did anybody ask you to take the jacket so they could test to see if the child threw up on your jacket?
No.
If they had, would you have turned it over to them?
Yes, I still have it also.
Where is it?
At my house.
Has it ever been cleaned?
No.
Why?
Because that's the last thing I got to remember of.
Nothing further.
Any recross?
Just a couple of young. Mr. Williams, I know they didn't take in that jacket for evidence, but did they in any way even talk to you about it or mention it while they were interviewing you?
Yes.
Now, in addition to that, when they were interviewing you and talking to you about the jacket, did anyone ever look at your hands?
No.
Did they ever photograph your hands?
No.
No one asked you to show your hands like this to the GBI agents?
Not that I recall.
No law enforcement asked for that to occur?
Not that I recall.
No photographs taken by anyone?
Not that I know of.
That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
All right. Anything else?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, so let's talk now about Trinity Poague's body language. And to do that, I want to bring in Susan Constantine. She is a body language expert. Susan, thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate it. I don't think Trinity shows a whole lot of emotion. This is my take at least. I'm wondering what your thoughts are.
Yes, and you're correct in that because she doesn't show a lot of emotion. But showing no emotion doesn't mean that she's not suppressing her emotions. And you literally can see it in her eyes. So we can talk about that in some of these clips that you've got set up for me.
Let's take a look now. This was right before opening statements when the judge was talking. Let's take a quick look.
Please don't draw any inference from that, and any of the conversation between the court and the lawyers about those objections is not evidence. That's legal banter that is not evidence in this case.
Okay, Susan, what did you think?
Okay, so what we typically see her do is there is no expression, of course, in her facial expression. She does tend to spread out somewhat, and that's taking up a little bit of space. However, her overall demeanor is very subdued. So when you look at her facial expressions, her eyes, her mouth, the psychophysiology within her skin, even coloring, that really does tell a story. So when I'm looking at those expressions that she has and that she's or doesn't have, this is a form of suppression. So what she is doing is consciously suppressing emotions, but that doesn't mean that she's not feeling emotion. It is a strategic move not to and deliberately suppress emotions so that she appears to have a neutral expression so others can't read her, but not everyone, including me. I can read through those non-suppression expressions.
So, Susan, let's take a look at another clip. This was during opening statements, and this was really when the DA is talking about the fact that his opinion is that Trinity really resented JD, this baby, and wanted her own baby with JD's father. And so she's showing some emotion here. As you said, though, you think she's trying to conceal it. So let's take a look and talk about it on the other side.
She resented this child because the child got more of Julian Williams. Jay, goes by Jay. Most people call him Jay Williams. And so if I say Jay or Julian, I'm talking about the same person. I'm talking about the child's father.
Okay, Susan. So Trinity Poague is listening to the DA talk about all of these things that she said in text messages. She's obviously paying attention. She's writing down notes for her attorney. What did you see?
Okay, so it's really interesting to watch what things that are triggering her. So you can see this quick little rapid flash of eye flutter that happens at strategic moments. Here's a strategic moment, and also there's something I want to talk about in her contempt. But when you're talking about text messages, right? There is a fear response, right? She swallowed. You could see that swallow that happened. When she was talking about that she was wanting to punch him, there's some of the allegations that others had made. You can see a quick little eye flutter that happens. When that occurs, that is a form of contempt also. So when her eyes are rolling up, it's like, oh, whatever. She's kind of dismissing it as a form of contempt, but also there's eye flutter. So eye flutters is cognitive load, and it increases. So what I'm looking at is when does it increase and when does it say more neutral? So like I'm watching your facial expressions and I'm watching your eye, your eye movement, like your flutters, right? You're closing and open. And it's a very natural, calm, in sync movement as you're talking because there's no threat. Right? But when she's hearing these allegations, it's increasing her stressors. That's right. Cognitive load. So that's when you start to say blink, 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 and all on those strategic moments. And then the eye diversion, which is a form of contempt, dismissal, like smugness. So those are things that I look for when I'm watching her. They're so subtle that if you don't know how to count blink rates and what's normal and what is not, and understand baseline and when it increases and decreases, you'll miss it. But when I'm trained to look for that, to me, it's glaring.
Yeah, I'm definitely not threatened by you,
I know
Susan.
you shouldn't be. You have nothing to hide.
Just to let you know that. Okay, we are going to take a look now at Trinity Poague during her defense attorney's opening statement and see if you see anything different.
And so as time went on from August until January when this event occurred, Julian Williams would come to see her at Georgia Southwestern College and spend the night quite often. He spent every weekend, virtually every weekend with her. And most days he spent at least a couple of times during the weekday with her.
Okay, so in this one, we're seeing the crocodile tears, right? So there's not any sort of tears that are streaming down her face. She's very self-aware. So she's kind of patting, touching, but there's not a real flow of the glands. So she's very self-aware. So she's not wanting to show, again, these are all these suppression, because this is all part of what we call image management. This is what she's, impression management. She's trying to give us a visual of that she's crying, but yet she can't produce the tears. So that's why you see her just kind of tapping them. The other thing is, you might have seen where she kind of bit her lip. There's a part right there. All right, so that's concern. So when you're hearing something that might create concern, because what you're doing is you are going back into a file in your subconscious memory when she heard that comment that created concern. So now if I were an investigator, I would be swarming around that cue, because somewhere in there was concern. Now, the other thing is that she tends to kind of look away. So look at the times where she looks away and at what point she does, because when I'm reading her in anyone's body language, you have to tie it to content. When somebody says something and then watch a change in their baseline, when there's a change in baseline, there's something changed, and that's really the bottom line. So what happened? There's obviously concern there because she swallowed. She dabbed her eye. She's trying to give the impression that she's, taken by it, that is creating an emotional response, but yet no flow of tears. She's biting the lip, which is concern. So now that's a cluster. See, now you start to thread the story together, and it begins to tell a different story non-verbally.
Really interesting. Do you think she's so self-aware in part because of her background on the beauty pageant circuit? She's used to being on stage, so she knows how to present herself, and she knows that it's important to carry herself in a certain way.
Sure. That's just part of performance, and that's image management. That's what falls underneath one of the points of interest in deception. A point of interest in deception is image management. That is where you try to control your expression so that you can convey a different emotion or a different, thought pattern. So, or sometimes when they're talking, they'll use language that will create a kind of a great image of themselves. So as a beauty queen, she knows she's on camera, right? So she knows how I'm supposed to walk, how I'm supposed to talk, and then how I'm supposed to carry my body language. And you're in performance because all the eyes are on you. So they try to shut down these nonverbals. You often see these artificial smiles, so those caged, selfie smiles, but you don't see this here. She's not, she's not on runway, but this is what they do because, that they're in front of the limelight. So you have to take that into consideration. However, if I were the jury, let's think about how the jury might perceive all of this. They're not going to see, she's really upset, she's crying, she seems dismissive, she doesn't seem like she's showing the right emotional affect. That's what they're reading. They may not know why she's doing it, but they are smart enough to figure out something's off with this. Because when a real emotion is projected, like on your face, if you're happy, you're going to actually make me smile. If you're upset about something, I might even furrow my eyebrows. So we tend to match and mirror emotion. So when you're looking at the jury, if I were in that in that courtroom, I'd be watching the jury to see how many people are showing any sort of empathy or concern with her. And chances are they are not. If that's the case, then they're not going to sympathize. And the emotion of sympathy is a really big factor here.
Well, Susan, it's always interesting to talk to you. You've always got some really interesting analysis when it comes to body language. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.
Now, there's one facial expression from Trinity Poague that we really do not need Susan here to analyze, and that is the face that she made when the verdicts were read.
All right, Ms. Poague, if you would please stand. The verdict reads as follows as to each count. On count 1, it says, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty. On counts 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, the verdict reads, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty of felony murder, 2 counts, aggravated battery, 2 counts, and cruelty to child in the first degree.
So Poague was acquitted of malice murder, but convicted of 2 counts of felony murder, 2 counts of aggravated battery, and 1 count of cruelty to children. The judge sentenced Trinity Poague to life in prison. She was clearly dejected and disappointed when hearing those words from the judge. She plans to appeal. And that's it for this episode of Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me. I'll see you back here next time.